Hello, I'm Victoria, and I am giving a response to the lecture from Professor Hamilton's analysis of Zitkala Shah's American Indian Stories novel. The part about Professor Hamilton's lecture that stood out to me was that at minute 42, he was talking about the thought that she could change the system from within, but found that she could not. This really hit me because I am interested in getting into politics. I have been for a couple of decades. I am worried about the ability to change the system from within. And reflecting on what Zitkala Shah had mentioned in the novel, when she says about her mother when she was first driven back to the village, her mother says, "My daughter, what madness possessed you to bring home such a fellow?" So even though her daughter is still the same person, the mother was so distracted by this individual who is a representation of who has caused so much harm to that community, that it was influencing the way that she interacted with her daughter. It kind of reminds me that the people who I'll be around will influence how I am perceived. Any of us are. And Zitkala Shah goes on to say, "Even the few rare ones who have worked nobly for my race were powerless to choose workmen like themselves. To be sure, a man was sent from the Great Father to inspect the Indian schools, but what he saw, usually the students' sample work, made for exhibition. I was nettled by this sly cunning of the workmen who hoodwinked the Indians' pale father in Washington, at Washington." So basically, this is just going to show that even though there are people who might say that they're allies, at the end of the day, there's still no change because there is more intention of putting on a face than there is of making real systemic change. And it kind of reminded me of in 2023 when Melanie Mark from the British Columbian Member of Legislation had resigned because, as was stated in the T article from Andrew MacLeod in February of 2023, she had stated that colonial institutions like the legislature and the government are resistant to change and allergic to doing things differently. And then she continued on saying that women are treated worse than men in politics, that much effort goes to making them look stupid. An emphasis that it's really hard to change the system from within because the colonial powers are not ready to make those changes, and it's really pushing against the grain of what Indigenous women have to go through in order to get respect in the legislation and in positions of power. And in the end, rereading that part, the last concluding pieces of An Indian Teacher Among Indians, there's this idea that like the hero complex is coming into play when these representatives from the government, these bring a charity to people, but in reality, they're not actually questioning what's happening to the people deeper within. It was harder for me to extrapolate deeper as to what the end pieces of the conclusion was saying. That's what I got out of that. So thank you.